Marcus Thompson caught his boss in his arms the moment her knees buckled her designer heels, scraping against the dirty bar floor. Victoria Sterling, the woman who had humiliated him in every meeting, blocked every promotion, made his life a living hell for 3 years, was now clutching his shirt like a drowning woman, mascara streaking down her face. "Don't let them see me like this," she whispered. "Please." He should have walked away. Any sane man would have. But what she confessed the next morning in his kitchen with his 7-year-old daughter listening from the hallway that changed everything. Some secrets are too heavy to carry alone, and some rescues save more than one person. Tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I want to see how far this story travels. Part 1. The Call 3. 800 words. The volcano was a disaster. Marcus Thompson knelt on his kitchen floor, surrounded by newspaper baking soda and what was supposed to be red food coloring, but had somehow turned everything a shade of muddy brown. His 7-year-old daughter Lily sat across from him, her braids tied back with purple ribbons, her face scrunched in concentration. "Daddy, it's not exploding, right?" "I know, baby. I know." Marcus wiped his hands on his old college sweatshirt, Howard University class of 2012, and studied the papier-mâché mountain like it held the secrets of the universe. "We need more vinegar, I think. Mrs. Patterson said the explosion has to be at least 6 inches high." 6 inches. That woman's trying to kill me. Lily giggled. That sound, that pure, unburdened laugh, was the only thing that kept Marcus sane most days. After everything, after her mother walking out, after the promotions that never came, after the bills that always did, that laugh was his anchor. His phone buzzed on the counter. He ignored it. "Daddy, your phone." "It can wait, but it keeps buzzing." Marcus sighed and pushed himself up from the floor. His knees protested. 34 felt a lot older when you were doing it alone. He grabbed the phone expecting a spam call, or maybe his mother checking in from Atlanta. The caller ID made him freeze. Victoria Sterling. He stared at the name like it was written in a foreign language. In 3 years of working under her at Hartfield & Associates, one of the most prestigious investment firms in Chicago, Victoria Sterling had never once called him directly. Not once. She communicated through emails, cold-clipped emails that always found something wrong with his work. She communicated through her assistant, a terrified young man named Bradley, who seemed perpetually on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She communicated through passive-aggressive comments in meetings that made his blood boil. But she never called. The phone buzzed again in his hand. He answered. "Hello." The voice on the other end wasn't the Victoria Sterling he knew. That Victoria was ice-controlled, precise, every word a calculated weapon. This voice was broken. Marcus. She'd never called him by his first name either. It was always Thompson or Matthews. She couldn't even be bothered to remember which surname was correct. "Ms. Sterling." "Marcus, I need." A long pause. He could hear music in the background, the low thump of bass, the murmur of voices. "I need help." He almost laughed. Victoria Sterling asking him for help was like the sun asking a candle for warmth. It didn't make sense. It couldn't be real. "What's going on? Where are you?" The Blue Velvet, I think. Downtown. I can't." Her voice cracked. "I can't drive, and my phone is dying, and I don't know who else to call." The line went dead. Marcus stood in his kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, listening to silence. His daughter was watching him, her volcano temporarily forgotten. "Daddy? Who was that?" He didn't answer right away. His mind was racing through options, excuses, reasons to ignore this. Victoria Sterling had made his professional life a nightmare. She questioned his competence in front of clients. She gave his ideas to junior associates and let them take credit. She'd passed him over for the senior manager position twice, giving it to people with half his experience and twice his privilege. And now she was calling him at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, drunk and stranded, asking for help. He should call her a cab. Send a text with the number. Let her figure it out herself. "Daddy." Marcus looked at his daughter. She was watching him with those big brown eyes, his eyes, everyone said so, and he thought about what he wanted her to learn about the world. About what it meant to be a person. About what it meant to be a black man in a world that often gave him every reason to walk away. "That was someone from work," he said finally. "She needs help. Is she sick? Something like that baby." He was already moving, grabbing his keys, his wallet, pulling up the babysitter's number. Mrs. Henderson was 72 years old, lived 2 floors down, and had been watching Lily since she was a baby. She answered on the second ring. "Marcus? Everything all right?" "Mrs. Henderson? I'm so sorry to ask this, but I have an emergency at work. Is there any way you could come sit with Lily for a couple hours? I'll pay triple whatever you want." "Oh, honey, you know I don't do it for the money." He could hear her already moving, probably putting on her slippers. "I'll be up in 2 minutes. That little girl and I need to catch up on our shows anyway." "Thank you. Thank you so much." He hung up and knelt down in front of Lily. "Hey, Mrs. Henderson is going to come stay with you for a bit. Okay, I have to go help my friend from work." "The lady who's sick?" "Yes, baby." Lily nodded solemnly. "You should bring her soup. That's what you bring me when I'm sick." Marcus's heart clenched. His daughter was 7 years old and already understood something about compassion that grown adults forgot. He kissed her forehead. "That's a good idea, baby. I love you." "Love you too, Daddy. Don't forget the soup." The Blue Velvet was exactly the kind of place Marcus would never go on his own. It was sleek, expensive, all dark leather and ambient lighting, the kind of lounge where a single cocktail cost more than his car payment. The holiday crowd was thick men in suits that cost more than his monthly salary, women in dresses that sparkled under the low lights. He felt out of place the moment he walked in. He always felt out of place in rooms like this. No matter how many degrees he earned, no matter how hard he worked, there was always that moment of hesitation, that awareness of eyes tracking him as he moved through the crowd. He pushed the feeling down and scanned the room. He found her at the bar. Victoria Sterling was 41 years old, the youngest female VP in Hartfield and Associates history, and she was falling apart. Her hair, usually swept up in a perfect chignon, was loose and tangled. Her designer blazer hung off one shoulder. Her makeup, always flawless, had smeared beneath her eyes. But what made Marcus's stomach drop was the man standing next to her. He was tall, white, maybe 50, with the kind of expensive tan you get from winter vacations, in places Marcus had only seen in magazines. He was leaning in close, too close, his hand planted firmly on Victoria's lower back. "Come on, sweetheart, let me get you home." "I said no." Victoria's voice was trying for firm, but it came out slurred and weak. "I don't know you." "You don't need to know me. I'm just trying to help." His hand slid lower. Victoria flinched. Marcus was moving before he made a conscious decision. He cut through the crowd, shoulders squared, jaw set, and inserted himself directly between Victoria and the man. "There you are." His voice was loud, deliberate. "I've been looking everywhere for you." The man's expression shifted from predatory charm to annoyance. "Excuse me. I'm here to pick up Ms. Sterling." Marcus didn't break eye contact. "Thanks for keeping her company, but I'll take it from here." The man looked him up and down, taking in his worn sweatshirt, his faded jeans, the fact that he very obviously didn't belong in a place like this. For a long moment, Marcus thought he might push back. The room suddenly felt smaller, the crowd closer. Then the man snorted and stepped back. "Whatever, man. She's not worth the trouble anyway. Barely conscious and still acts like she's better than everyone." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd without looking back. Marcus turned to Victoria. She was staring at him like she was seeing a ghost. "You came. You called. I didn't think you would come." She tried to stand and immediately pitched forward. Marcus caught her, his hands gripping her arms to keep her upright. She was lighter than he expected, more fragile than the armor she wore every day at work suggested. "Easy. I've got you." "You shouldn't be here." Her words were slurring together. "I'm horrible to you. Everyone knows I'm horrible to you. We can talk about that later. Right now, I need to get you somewhere safe. Where do you live?" Victoria's face changed. The vulnerability he'd been seeing suddenly snapped into something sharper panic. "No. Can't go home." "Why not?" "Richard. He's there." She was gripping Marcus's arms now, her fingers digging in. "He's getting the last of his things. The divorce was final 3 months ago, but he kept finding reasons to come back. Tonight's supposed to be the end. The last time. I can't—" Her voice broke. "I can't let him see me like this." Marcus processed this. Victoria Sterling, the woman who seemed to have everything: the corner office, the 6-figure salary, the respect that came with a title he might never achieve, was hiding in a bar because she couldn't face her ex-husband. He understood hiding. He understood not wanting to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing you broken. "What about a hotel?" She shook her head. "It'll get back to work. Someone will see me. Someone always sees." "A friend." She laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound. "I don't have friends, Thompson. Haven't you noticed I have colleagues who tolerate me and employees who fear me? That's it. That's all." She slumped against him, and for a moment Marcus thought she might pass out. He held her up, his mind racing through options that were rapidly narrowing to one. He thought about Lily. About Mrs. Henderson, who was probably already asleep on his couch. About what it would mean to bring his boss the woman who had made his professional life miserable into his home. He thought about the man who had just walked away muttering that Victoria wasn't worth the trouble. He thought about every time someone had looked at him like he wasn't worth the trouble either. "I have a couch," he said finally, "and coffee for the morning." Victoria lifted her head. Her eyes, usually so sharp, so calculating, were swimming with tears. "Why would you do that?" "Because you need help, and because my daughter would never forgive me if I left someone stranded." Victoria opened her mouth like she wanted to argue. Then something in her face crumpled, and she nodded. "Okay." Getting her to the cab was a production. Victoria Sterling might have been a petite woman, but dead weight was dead weight, and Marcus found himself practically carrying her through the parking lot. She mumbled the entire way, fragments of sentences that didn't quite connect. The Westfield presentation. Quarterly projections. Need to restructure the portfolio. Just focus on walking. I'm a terrible person, you know. Marcus didn't respond to that. He got her into the back of the cab, slid in beside her, and gave the driver his address. "Your wife?" the driver asked, glancing in the rearview mirror with a knowing look. "My boss." The driver raised an eyebrow but said nothing else. Smart man. Victoria's head lolled against Marcus's shoulder. She smelled like expensive perfume and cheaper vodka, a combination that seemed to summarize her entire evening. "Richard always said I was too cold," she mumbled. "Too focused on work. Said I loved my career more than I loved him." Marcus stared straight ahead. Maybe he was right. Maybe that's why he slept with his 26-year-old yoga instructor. Because I was too cold. That's not why he did it. Victoria lifted her head. What? He did it because he was weak. Because he couldn't handle being with a woman who was more successful than him. It had nothing to do with you being cold. She stared at him for a long moment. How do you know that? Because I've seen men like him my whole life, and I've seen women like you blame themselves for things that were never their fault. Victoria was quiet after that. Marcus thought she might have fallen asleep, but when they pulled up to his building, a modest 3-story apartment complex on the south side, she whispered, "Thank you." Mrs. Henderson was asleep on the couch when they came in a rerun of some crime show playing quietly on the TV. She woke immediately, took one look at Victoria, and asked no questions. "Lily's been out for about an hour. Sweet as always." She gathered her things, pausing at the door. "You're a good man, Marcus. Don't let anyone tell you different." He walked her to the elevator, pressed a wad of bills into her hand, despite her protests, and returned to find Victoria standing in his living room, staring at the photographs on his wall. There were dozens of them. Lily as a baby, all fat cheeks and curious eyes. Lily at her kindergarten graduation. Lily on Marcus's shoulders at the 4th of July parade. Lily with his mother in Atlanta. Lily, 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 a chronicle of a life built around a child who was everything. "She looks like you." Marcus moved to stand beside her. "That's what everyone says." "Same eyes, same—" She swayed slightly. "Same stubborn expression." He caught her arm. "I think you need to sit down." "I think you're right." He guided her to the couch. Mrs. Henderson had left a blanket folded at one end, and he draped it over Victoria's shoulders. She pulled it tight around herself, looking smaller than he'd ever seen her. "The bathroom's down the hall if you need it. I'll get you some water." "Wait." Her hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. "Don't go yet." He paused. "You know why I'm so hard on you at work?" "Ms. Sterling." "Victoria. My name is Victoria, and please, let me say this while I still have the courage." Marcus sat down on the edge of the coffee table, facing her. She was looking at him with an intensity that cut through the alcohol haze, and he realized that whatever was coming next had been building for a long time. "I'm hard on you because you terrify me." He blinked. "I terrify you. You're the most talented person in the department. You understand things instinctively that take other analysts months to figure out. Your work is clean, thorough, brilliant. And every time I see you in a meeting, every time I read one of your reports, I think—" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I think this is the man who's going to replace me." Marcus sat in stunned silence. "I'm 41 years old," Victoria continued. "I've given everything to this career. Everything. My marriage, my friendships, any chance at a normal life. And in 5 years, 10 years, someone younger and hungrier is going to come along and take it all away. That's how this industry works. And I looked at you and I thought if I made it hard enough, you'd leave. Go somewhere else. Stop being a threat." "I'm not a threat to you." "You are, though. You're everything I wish I could be. Talented and kind, successful and present." She gestured at the photos on the wall. "You have a life, Marcus. A real one. I have a corner office and a divorce settlement and a bar I go to alone because I don't know where else to go." The words hung in the air between them. Marcus had spent 3 years resenting this woman, fantasizing about the day she'd finally see him for who he was. And now she was telling him she'd seen him all along, and it had scared her. "The Westfield presentation is tomorrow," she said suddenly. "The quarterly report. The board is flying in specifically to see it. And I don't—" She pressed her hands to her face. "I don't remember if I finished the slides. I can't remember anything right now." "I finished them." She went still. "What?" "The Westfield presentation. I saw you were overwhelmed last week, so I put together the slides. They're in your email. I was going to tell you tomorrow." Victoria stared at him like he'd just spoken in tongues. "Why would you do that?" "Because the presentation matters, and because the team matters, and because—" He stopped, not sure how to finish. "Because you're a better person than I am." "That's not what I was going to say." "But it's true." Victoria's eyes were filling with tears now. "I've been terrible to you. Terrible to everyone. And you saved my presentation anyway. You came to get me at midnight, even though you have a daughter at home. You brought me here, instead of leaving me to fend for myself." She reached out her hand, finding his. "Why?" Marcus looked at this woman who had made his life difficult for 3 years. He thought about resentment, about revenge, about all the ways he could have chosen to hurt her the way she'd hurt him. And then he thought about his daughter asleep down the hall, about the kind of man he wanted her to see when she looked at him, about what it meant to be someone worth admiring. "Because I've spent my whole life watching people get treated like they're not worth helping," he said quietly. "And I decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to be one of those people who looks the other way. Not for anyone. Not even for you." Victoria's hand tightened around his. A tear slipped down her cheek. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." Marcus didn't say it was okay because it wasn't. Not yet. But he didn't pull his hand away either. "Get some sleep," he said finally. "We can talk about everything else in the morning." He stood, grabbed a pillow from the closet, and set it at the end of the couch. Victoria watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read, gratitude maybe, or something more complicated. "Marcus." He paused at the hallway. "Thank you for seeing me." He nodded once and walked to his room, closing the door softly behind him. In the silence of his bedroom, Marcus Thompson lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling. He didn't know what morning would bring. He didn't know if Victoria's words were real or just the vodka talking. He didn't know if anything between them would actually change. But somewhere in the back of his mind, buried beneath all the uncertainty, was a feeling he hadn't expected. Hope. Marcus woke to the sound of laughter. For a moment he was disoriented. The morning light was streaming through his blinds. His alarm hadn't gone off yet, and there was laughter coming from his kitchen. Lily's laughter, bright and unguarded, mixed with another voice. A woman's voice. He sat up so fast, he nearly fell out of bed. The events of the previous night crashed back into his memory. The phone call, the bar, Victoria Sterling slumped against him in the cab, the confession on his couch. He grabbed his phone and checked the time. 6:47 a.m. He'd forgotten to set his alarm. Lily needed to be at school in an hour, and his boss, who had spent the night on his couch, was apparently in his kitchen making his daughter laugh. He threw on a t-shirt and moved quickly down the hallway. The scene that greeted him stopped him dead in his tracks. Victoria Sterling was sitting at his small kitchen table, still wearing yesterday's wrinkled blouse, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail that must have been Lily's doing. His daughter was perched on the chair beside her, a bowl of cereal in front of her, demonstrating something with her hands, while Victoria watched with genuine attention. "And then you add the vinegar, but you have to do it slow or it goes everywhere. Daddy made it go everywhere last night." "Did he now?" "Uh-huh. It got on the ceiling." Victoria laughed. It wasn't the cold, polished laugh Marcus had heard in boardrooms. This was real, surprised and warm, like she'd forgotten she knew how to make that sound. "Daddy?" Lily spotted him first, her face lighting up. Victoria turned, and for a moment something flickered across her expression. Embarrassment maybe, or uncertainty. But she didn't look away. "Good morning." Her voice was careful, measured. "I hope you don't mind. Lily found me on the couch and decided I needed breakfast." "Ms. Victoria didn't know how to use the coffee maker," Lily announced. "So I showed her, and then I made her cereal because she said her tummy felt weird." Marcus looked at the coffee maker, then at his daughter, then at Victoria. There were so many things wrong with this picture, so many boundaries crossed, so many questions unanswered, but Lily was beaming like she'd just made a new best friend. "Thank you for taking care of our guest baby." He crossed to the coffee maker and poured himself a cup. "Did you brush your teeth yet?" "Not yet." "Go do that, okay? You've got school in an hour." Lily hopped off her chair, but paused next to Victoria. "Are you going to be here when I get home from school?" Victoria glanced at Marcus, then back at Lily. "I don't think so, sweetheart. But it was really nice meeting you." "You too. You should come back for dinner sometime. Daddy makes really good spaghetti." She bounced off toward the bathroom, leaving Marcus and Victoria alone in the sudden quiet. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Marcus stood by the counter, coffee cup in hand, watching Victoria fidget with the sleeve of her blouse. She looked different in the morning light, smaller somehow, more human. The armor she wore at work was completely gone, and what remained was just a woman who looked exhausted and ashamed. "I should go," she said finally. "I've already imposed enough." "How's your head?" She winced. "Terrible. I haven't drunk like that in years. I don't know what I was thinking." "You weren't thinking. That was kind of the point." She nodded, accepting the truth of it. "Marcus, about last night." "Which part?" The question hung between them. Victoria's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. "All of it. Everything I said. About being threatened by you, about making your life difficult." She took a breath. "I remember all of it. I wasn't blackout drunk. I was just drunk enough to say things I've been thinking for a long time." Marcus set his cup down and pulled out the chair across from her. He sat elbows on the table and looked at her directly. "So it was all true?" "Yes." "The part about blocking my promotions?" She hesitated, then nodded. "The part about giving my ideas to other people?" Another nod. "The part about being afraid I'd replace you?" "Especially that part." Marcus leaned back in his chair. He'd spent 3 years wondering if he was imagining things, if maybe he just wasn't good enough, if the system was rigged, or if he was making excuses. Now Victoria was sitting in his kitchen, confirming every suspicion he'd ever had. He should have been angry. Part of him was angry. But mostly, he just felt tired. "I've got a daughter to raise," he said quietly. "A mortgage to pay. I needed those promotions. I needed that recognition. Do you understand what you took from me?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I'm sorry. That word isn't enough. I know it isn't enough, but I am so deeply, profoundly sorry." "Sorry doesn't give me back 3 years." "No, it doesn't." She pressed her hands flat on the table, steadying herself. "But I can give you the next 3, and the 3 after that." Marcus frowned. "What are you talking about?" "There's a senior manager position opening up next month. Henderson is retiring. I was planning to recommend Jessica Parker, but she's not half the analyst you are. No one is." Victoria met his eyes. "I'm going to recommend you instead. And I'm going to make sure the board knows exactly how much of our success this year was because of your work." He stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because it's the right thing to do. Because I've spent too many years doing the wrong thing and telling myself it was survival." She paused. "And because you saved me last night. You had every reason to leave me in that bar. You had every reason to let that man take me wherever he wanted to take me. But you came anyway." "I didn't come for you. I came because my daughter would be disappointed if I didn't." Victoria smiled, sad and knowing. "That's exactly why you deserve the promotion. You make decisions based on what kind of man you want to be, not what kind of advantage you can get. That's rare. In our industry, it's almost non-existent." The bathroom door banged open, and Lily came running out, toothbrush still in hand. "Daddy, I can't find my purple shoes." Marcus stood automatically. "Check under your bed. That's where they were last time." "I already checked." "Check again, baby." Lily disappeared back down the hall, and Marcus turned to Victoria. She was already standing, gathering her blazer from the back of the couch. "I should call a car, get home, shower, try to make myself look like someone who deserves to present to a board of directors." She pulled out her phone, then paused. "The Westfield presentation. You said you finished the slides. They're in your inbox. Sent them last night around 8. Before I called you." "Yeah." Victoria shook her head slowly. "I don't understand you, Marcus Thompson. I treat you like dirt for 3 years and you spend your evenings finishing my presentations. I wasn't doing it for you. I was doing it for the team. And for the client. The Westfield account matters to a lot of people. But you put my name on it. Because you're the VP. It's your presentation." She stared at him for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes. "You really don't play the game, do you? The corporate ladder, the politics, the backstabbing, you just refuse to participate. I don't have time for games. I've got a daughter to raise and work to do. Everything else is noise. Victoria laughed softly. Maybe that's why you scare me so much. You don't want my job. You don't want to tear me down. You just want to do good work and go home to your kid. And somehow that's more threatening than any rival I've ever had. Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. I'm going to go, Victoria said, heading for the door. But Marcus, what I said last night about not having friends, about having no one to call. She stopped with her hand on the doorknob. I know I don't have any right to ask this. I know I've been terrible to you. But if I needed someone again, if I was in trouble, you can call me. She looked surprised. Just like that. Just like that. Even after everything. Marcus thought about the man at the bar, the way he'd looked at Victoria like she was prey. He thought about his own mother working double shifts at a hospital for 30 years, coming home exhausted, but never too tired to ask about his day. He thought about what it meant to be the kind of person who showed up. My mama raised me to help people who need help, he said simply. She didn't put conditions on it. Neither do I. Victoria's eyes were shining when she opened the door. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. He nodded, and she was gone. The apartment felt different after she left, quieter somehow despite Lily's ongoing hunt for the purple shoes. Marcus stood in the kitchen drinking his coffee, trying to process what had just happened. His boss, the woman who had been his professional nemesis for 3 years, had spent the night on his couch, confessed to sabotaging his career, and promised to make it right. It felt like something out of a fever dream. Part of him kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Found them. Lily came running out, purple shoes, triumphantly raised above her head. They were under the bed just like you said. Told you. She plopped down on the couch to put them on, then looked up at him with curious eyes. Daddy, is Ms. Victoria your friend? Marcus considered the question. 24 hours ago, he would have said Victoria Sterling was the closest thing he had to an enemy at work. Now he wasn't sure what she was. I think she might be, he said finally. We're still figuring it out. I like her. She's nice. She was nice to you? Uh-huh. She asked me about my volcano and my school and my favorite color, and she said my braids were really pretty. Lily paused. She seemed sad, though, even when she was smiling. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. His 7-year-old daughter had seen in 5 minutes what he'd missed in 3 years. Victoria Sterling wasn't cold. She was lonely. There was a difference. Yeah, baby. I think she's been sad for a while. Maybe she needs a friend. Maybe she does. Lily finished tying her shoes and stood up, grabbing her backpack from the hook by the door. You should be her friend, Daddy. You're really good at making people feel better. Marcus smiled and took her hand as they headed out. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just didn't notice. He laughed, the first real laugh he'd had in days, and led his daughter to the car. The drive to school was normal. They talked about the volcano project, still not erupting properly, about her upcoming spelling test. She was nervous about the word necessary, about what she wanted for dinner spaghetti. Obviously, she'd mentioned it to Victoria, and now she couldn't stop thinking about it. By the time Marcus pulled up to the elementary school, the events of the previous night felt almost surreal. Have a good day, baby. I'll pick you up at 3. Okay, Daddy. She leaned over and kissed his cheek. Tell Miss Victoria I said good luck with her important meeting. Then she was gone, running toward the building where her teacher was waiting, purple shoes flashing in the morning sun. Marcus sat in the car for a moment, thinking about what Lily had said. About Victoria being sad. About needing a friend. About how some people smiled even when they were breaking inside. He pulled out his phone and typed a message before he could talk himself out of it. Good luck today. You've got this, Marcus. He stared at the words for a long moment, then hit send. The drive to work was the same route he'd taken for 3 years, but everything felt different. The skyline of downtown Chicago rose ahead of him, glass and steel gleaming in the morning light, and Marcus found himself wondering which window belonged to Victoria's office. Was she there already? Had she managed to shower and change and transform herself back into the Ice Queen everyone expected? His phone buzzed. He glanced at it at a red light. "I don't deserve your kindness, but thank you. V." Marcus put the phone down and kept driving. Hartfield and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of one of the city's tallest buildings. Marcus had always felt a mixture of pride and unease walking through the lobby. Pride that he'd earned his place here, unease that so few faces looked like his. The security guard nodded at him as he passed. The elevator carried him swiftly upward, and before he knew it, he was stepping onto the 42nd floor. The atmosphere was different today. Electric. The Westfield presentation was at 10, and everyone knew how important it was. Analysts rushed past with folders and laptops. Assistants whispered urgently into phones. The coffee machine was surrounded by people who looked like they hadn't slept. Marcus made his way to his desk, trying to act normal. Trying not to think about the fact that his boss had cried on his couch 8 hours ago. "Thompson." He turned. David Chen, his closest friend at the firm, was hurrying over with a look of barely contained excitement. "Did you hear Sterling's presenting to the board this morning? The Westfield pitch. Word is, if she lands this account, she's on track for the director position." "Yeah, I heard. I also heard she almost missed the meeting. Bradley said she came in looking like she'd been through a hurricane, but she's cleaned up now, locked herself in her office for an hour to prepare." David lowered his voice. "Between you and me, I don't think she's as put together as everyone thinks. Something's going on with her." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "People have off days. I guess. Anyway, I'm heading to the break room. You want anything?" "I'm good, thanks." David walked off, and Marcus sat down at his desk. He pulled up his email, checked his calendar, tried to focus on the tasks that needed his attention. But his mind kept drifting back to Victoria. She'd said she was going to recommend him for the senior manager position. She'd said she was going to tell the board about his contributions. But people said a lot of things in vulnerable moments. The morning light had a way of making the night's promises feel like dreams. He opened the Westfield file just to make sure the presentation had gone through properly. The slides were there, polished and professional, with Victoria's name at the top. He scrolled through them, checking for errors, finding none. At the bottom of the document, in small text, was a note he'd added almost as an afterthought: "Research and analysis by Marcus Thompson, Senior Analyst." He'd never been credited on a VP presentation before. It wasn't protocol. But he'd decided late last night that if he was going to do the work, he was going to put his name on it. Let Victoria decide whether to keep it or delete it. Apparently, she'd kept it. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Victoria. "I saw the credit line. Thank you for not letting me be a coward about this. V." Marcus smiled despite himself and typed back, "Just doing my job." Her response came quickly. "We both know it's more than that. Presentation starts in 20. Wish me luck." "You don't need luck. You're prepared. Now go kill it." He put the phone away and tried to focus on work. For the next hour, he answered emails, reviewed reports, sat in on a conference call that could have been an email. Normal office things. But part of his attention was always on the clock counting down the minutes until the presentation ended. At 10:47, his email pinged with a company-wide notification. "Hartfield and Associates is pleased to announce that we have secured the Westfield account, one of the largest client acquisitions in company history. Please join us in congratulating Victoria Sterling and the Westfield team for their exceptional work." Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. No, not unknown. Victoria must have added herself to his contacts. "We did it. Board was impressed. Henderson made a comment about the research being unusually thorough. I told him it was your work. He wants to meet with you next week. V." Marcus stared at the message. She'd actually done it. She'd given him credit in front of the board, in front of everyone who mattered. After 3 years of taking, she was finally giving back. He didn't know how to respond. Thank you seemed too small. He settled on something simple. I appreciate that, really. Her reply came instantly. It's the least I can do. And Marcus, I meant what I said this morning. All of it. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Marcus went through the motions of work, but his mind was elsewhere. He thought about Victoria's confession, about her promise, about the way Lily had said she seemed sad even when she was smiling. He thought about the man at the bar, the one who'd called Victoria not worth the trouble. He thought about all the people who had probably said the same thing about him over the years, the ones who looked at his face and his neighborhood and decided he wasn't worth the effort. At 5:15, he was packing up his desk when his phone rang. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. Hello. Marcus. Her voice was steady now, professional, the VP mask firmly back in place. I wanted to thank you again, for last night, for the presentation, for everything. You already thanked me. I know, but I wanted to say it again when I wasn't hungover and wearing yesterday's clothes. She paused. I also wanted to ask you something, and I want you to know that you can say no. There's no pressure, no professional implications, just a question. Marcus leaned against his desk. Okay. Would you like to have dinner with me? Not a work thing, just dinner. I realized today that I don't remember the last time I had a meal with someone who wasn't a client or a board member. Marcus was silent for a moment, processing. Victoria Sterling was asking him to dinner. His boss. The woman who had sabotaged his career for 3 years. The woman who had cried on his couch and promised to make things right. Lily has a science fair tomorrow, he said finally. I can't miss it. Of course, I understand. But I could do Friday, if you're free. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was softer. Friday works. I'll text you the details. Okay? And Marcus, thank you for not giving up on me. She hung up before he could respond. Marcus stood in his office for a long moment, phone still pressed to his ear, trying to understand how his life had shifted so dramatically in less than 24 hours. Yesterday, Victoria Sterling was the obstacle standing between him and his goals. Today she was. What a friend. An ally. Something else entirely. He didn't have answers. All he had was a dinner invitation and a promise of change. For now, that was enough. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator, already calculating the fastest route to pick up Lily from after-school care. There would be time to figure out the rest later. Right now, he had a science project to fix and a daughter who was waiting to tell him about her day. The elevator doors opened and Marcus stepped inside. As the floors counted down, he caught sight of his reflection in the polished metal doors. A black man in a corporate building heading home to his daughter, carrying more hope than he'd felt in years. Sometimes he thought the most unexpected nights lead to the most unexpected mornings. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who end up needing you the most. The doors opened and Marcus walked out into the evening air, ready for whatever came next. Friday came faster than Marcus expected. He stood in front of his closet staring at the same 3 dress shirts he'd owned for years, trying to decide which one said, "Casual dinner with my boss who cried on my couch," without saying, "I'm trying too hard." Lily sat on his bed behind him, legs swinging, watching the proceedings with the critical eye of a 7-year-old fashion consultant. "The blue one, Daddy. You think it makes your eyes look nice. That's what Grandma always says." Marcus pulled the blue shirt off the hanger and held it up. It was the shirt he'd worn to his last job interview 4 years ago. The shirt he'd worn to Lily's kindergarten graduation. The shirt his mother had bought him for Christmas because she said every man needed one good blue shirt. Blue it is. He changed quickly while Lily chattered about her day. The science fair had been a moderate success. The volcano had finally erupted to regulation height. earning Lily a second-place ribbon that was currently displayed on the refrigerator like a trophy. She'd talked about it for 2 days straight, and Marcus had listened to every word, grateful for the distraction from his own spiraling thoughts. "Where are you going tonight, Daddy?" "Dinner with a friend." "Ms. Victoria." Marcus paused, buttons half done. "How did you know that?" Lily shrugged, like it was obvious. "You've been looking at your phone a lot, and you smile when you read the messages. You only smile like that when it's someone you like." 7 years old, and already too perceptive for her own good. Marcus finished buttoning his shirt and sat down on the bed next to her. "Yes, I'm having dinner with Miss Victoria. Mrs. Henderson is going to stay with you tonight. Is that okay? Is Miss Victoria your girlfriend now?" The question caught him off guard. "No, baby. She's just a friend. We work together." "But she could be your girlfriend, if you wanted." "Lily." "I'm just saying." She looked up at him with those big brown eyes, so serious, so much older than her years. "You're always alone, Daddy. It's okay if you want someone to be with. I wouldn't be mad." Marcus felt his throat tighten. He pulled Lily into a hug, pressing his face against her braids. "When did you get so grown up?" "I've always been grown up. You just didn't notice." He laughed, but there was a catch in it. "I love you. You know that." "I know. I love you too." She pulled back and straightened his collar with small, careful hands. "Now go have fun with Ms. Victoria. And don't forget to compliment her dress. Ladies like that." "Where did you learn that?" "Grandma." Of course. His mother's influence extended even from Atlanta. Mrs. Henderson arrived at 6:30, armed with board games and the promise of hot chocolate. Marcus kissed Lily goodbye, grabbed his keys, and headed out into the evening. The restaurant Victoria had chosen was nothing like he'd expected. He'd braced himself for somewhere expensive and intimidating, the kind of place where he'd feel out of place in his one good blue shirt. Instead, she'd picked a small Italian restaurant in a neighborhood he'd never been to, tucked between a laundromat and a used bookstore. Victoria was already there when he arrived, seated at a corner table with a glass of water in front of her. She looked different outside of work, softer, somehow. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders in waves he'd never seen before. She wore a simple green dress, no jewelry except for small earrings that caught the light when she turned her head. She stood when she saw him, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "You came," she said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I wasn't sure. I've been sitting here for 20 minutes convincing myself you'd change your mind." Marcus pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. "I don't change my mind easy. Ask anyone who knows me." Victoria smiled, that real smile, the one he'd first seen in his kitchen with Lily, and sat back down. "This place doesn't look like much, but the food is incredible. I used to come here with my grandmother when I was little, before she passed." "You grew up in Chicago?" "South Side, about 15 minutes from your apartment, actually." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You're kidding." "I wish I was." Victoria traced the rim of her water glass with one finger. "I don't tell people that. At work, I let them assume I'm from somewhere. Cleaner. More acceptable. It's easier that way." "Easier how?" "You know how. You work in the same building I do. You see the same faces, hear the same assumptions." She met his eyes. "The difference is, you never tried to hide where you came from. I've spent my whole career pretending to be someone else." The waiter appeared before Marcus could respond, a young man with an easy smile, who greeted Victoria by name. They ordered pasta for him, risotto for her, a bottle of wine that Victoria insisted on, even though Marcus rarely drank. When they were alone again, Victoria leaned forward. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Depends on how personal." "Lily's mother. What happened?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. It wasn't a secret exactly, but it wasn't something he talked about either. Most people knew better than to ask. "She left when Lily was 2, he said finally. Said she wasn't cut out for motherhood. Said she'd made a mistake." He paused. She sends a card on Lily's birthday sometimes. That's about it. I'm sorry. Don't be. Lily and I are better off. Her mother would have made her feel like a burden, and Lily deserves better than that. Victoria nodded slowly. I think that's what I admire most about you. The way you talk about your daughter. Like she's the center of everything. She is. I know. That's what I mean. Victoria picked up her wine glass, took a small sip. My ex-husband and I talked about having kids once, before things fell apart. He said I'd be a terrible mother, too focused on work, too cold. That's a terrible thing to say to someone. He said a lot of terrible things. The worst part is I believed most of them. She set the glass down. The night you found me at the bar that was supposed to be my fresh start. Richard was finally moving out, getting the last of his things. I was going to go home to an empty apartment and finally feel free. But I got there and I couldn't go in. I couldn't face it alone. So you went to the bar instead? So I went to the bar instead. And I drank too much, and I called the one person I knew would actually answer. She looked at him. Do you know why I called you Marcus, out of everyone in my phone? I've been wondering about that. Because you're the only person I know who does the right thing without expecting anything in return. I've watched you for 3 years. I've seen you stay late to help junior analysts. I've seen you give credit to people who didn't deserve it. I've seen you take the blame for mistakes that weren't yours just to protect your team. Her voice wavered slightly. I've been terrible to you, and you've never once been terrible back. That night at the bar, I knew that if I called you, you would come. Even though I didn't deserve it. Marcus didn't know what to say. He'd never thought of himself as particularly remarkable. He just did what felt right and tried to sleep at night. I almost didn't answer, he admitted. When I saw your name on the phone, I thought about letting it go to voicemail. Why didn't you? Because Lily was watching, and I didn't want her to see me be the kind of man who ignores someone in trouble. He paused. And because, I don't know, something in your voice. You didn't sound like the Victoria Sterling I knew. You sounded like someone who needed help. The food arrived, and for a while they ate in comfortable silence. The pasta was as good as Victoria had promised, and Marcus found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did outside his own home. There was something easy about being with her like this, away from the office and the hierarchy and all the complicated history between them. Can I tell you something? Victoria said suddenly. Always. I've been thinking about what you said, about being raised to help people without putting conditions on it. She set down her fork. I wasn't raised like that. My mother was a single parent, worked 2 jobs to keep us fed. She taught me that everything in life is a transaction, that people only help you when they want something in return. That sounds lonely. It was. It is. She looked at him. But you're proof that she was wrong. You helped me without expecting anything. You brought me into your home, let me meet your daughter, covered for me at work, and you never once asked for anything in return. I'm not keeping score, Victoria. I know. That's exactly my point. She reached across the table and touched his hand. I've spent my whole life keeping score, making sure I never owed anyone anything, never let anyone get close enough to hurt me. And look where it got me. Alone in a bar, too drunk to drive, calling an employee I'd spent 3 years trying to destroy. Her hand was warm on his. Marcus turned his palm up, letting their fingers intertwine. You didn't destroy me. I tried. You failed. He smiled slightly. I'm tougher than I look. Victoria laughed, and something in her eyes softened. Yes, you are. That's another thing I've learned about you. They finished dinner and ordered dessert tiramisu to share because Victoria insisted it was the best in the city. The restaurant had emptied out around them, but neither seemed to notice. They talked about everything and nothing: childhood memories, favorite books, the best places to get breakfast in Chicago. Marcus told her about his mother in Atlanta, his dreams of one day starting his own consulting firm. Victoria told him about her grandmother, about the summers she'd spent in this neighborhood, about the person she'd been before corporate life had carved her into something sharp and cold. "I miss her sometimes," Victoria said quietly. "The person I used to be, before I learned to be afraid." "She's still in there." "You think so?" "I saw her. That morning in my kitchen with Lily. She was right there." Victoria's eyes shone in the dim light. "Your daughter is incredible, you know that? She's everything good about you, wrapped up in this tiny person with purple shoes and strong opinions about volcanoes." Marcus felt his chest swell with pride. "She's the best thing I've ever done. The only thing that really matters. You're a good father, Marcus. Better than most people realize. I'm just trying not to mess her up." "You're not. Trust me." Victoria squeezed his hand. "She's going to grow up knowing that she's loved. That's more than most people get." The check came, and Victoria insisted on paying despite Marcus's protests. They walked out into the cool evening air, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "I should get back," Marcus said. "Mrs. Henderson has my number, but I don't like leaving Lily too long." "Of course, I understand." Victoria stood facing him on the sidewalk, hands clasped in front of her, like she wasn't sure what to do with them. "Marcus, I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "This. Whatever this is." She gestured between them. "I don't know how to be a friend. I don't know how to let someone in without trying to control everything. I don't know how to trust." Marcus stepped closer. "You just start. You don't have to figure it all out at once. What if I mess it up? Then you apologize and try again. That's what people do. People who aren't me. People exactly like you." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so natural he didn't realize he'd done it until she drew a sharp breath. "Victoria, you spent 20 years building walls. You're not going to tear them all down in one night. But you took the first step. That's what matters." She looked up at him, vulnerability written across every feature. "Why are you so patient with me?" "Because I see who you are underneath all the armor. And I think she's worth waiting for." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The street was quiet, the sounds of the city muffled and distant. Marcus could feel his heart beating, could see the question in Victoria's eyes, could sense the weight of all the things neither of them was saying. "I should go," he said finally. "Yes." But she didn't step back. "Marcus." "Yeah." "Can we do this again?" He smiled. "I'd like that." The drive home felt longer than usual. Marcus replayed the evening in his head, analyzing every word, every gesture, every moment their eyes had met across the table. He didn't know what was happening between him and Victoria. He wasn't sure he wanted to name it yet, but whatever it was, it felt different from anything he'd experienced before. Mrs. Henderson was watching TV when he got home, Lily asleep in her room. "How was your evening?" the older woman asked, her eyes twinkling with knowing. "Good. It was good." She gathered her things and headed for the door. "You've got a spring in your step, Marcus Thompson. I haven't seen that in a while." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." She patted his cheek like he was still the college student she'd first met 8 years ago. "Get some sleep. That little girl of yours will be up at dawn." After she left, Marcus checked on Lily. She was sprawled across her bed, one arm hanging off the edge, her purple ribbon from the science fair clutched in her hand, even in sleep. He pulled the blanket up over her shoulders and stood there for a moment watching her breathe. "I think something might be changing, baby girl," he whispered. "I don't know if it's good or scary or both, but I think it might be something." Lily stirred, but didn't wake. Marcus kissed her forehead and went to his own room. He was almost asleep when his phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Thank you for tonight. I haven't felt this hopeful in a long time." He typed back, "Me neither." Get some sleep." Her response came a moment later. "I'll try. Good night, Marcus." "Good night, Victoria." He put the phone on his nightstand and stared at the ceiling. Outside, the city hummed with its usual noise traffic voices, the distant wail of a siren. Inside, everything was quiet. Marcus closed his eyes and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The weekend passed in a blur of homework help and grocery shopping and phone calls with his mother, who somehow sensed that something was different and wouldn't stop asking questions. Marcus deflected as best he could, but his mother was relentless. "You sound happy," she said during their Sunday afternoon call. "That's not normal for you." "Thanks, Mama. Really feeling the love." "I'm serious, baby. You've had something in your voice all week. What aren't you telling me?" "Nothing. Everything's fine." "Marcus Jerome Thompson, I raised you for 18 years. I know when you're hiding something." He sighed. There was no winning with this woman. "I met someone. Kind of. It's complicated." The squeal that came through the phone nearly deafened him. "I knew it. Who is she? What's her name? When do I get to meet her?" "Mama, please. It's not even a thing yet. We've had dinner once, that's it." "But you like her." Marcus thought about Victoria's laugh, about the way she'd looked at him across the table, about the warmth of her hand in his. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think I do." "Then make it a thing, baby. You deserve to be happy. You've been alone too long." "I'm not alone. I have Lily." "That's not the same, and you know it." His mother's voice softened. "Your daddy and I were married 42 years before he passed. Best 42 years of my life. I want that for you, Marcus. I want you to have someone who sees you for who you are." "I know, Mama. So don't mess this up." "I'll try not to." Monday morning came with a new energy. Marcus arrived at the office early as usual, but something felt different. Lighter. He nodded to colleagues in the elevator, made small talk with the receptionist, even smiled at Bradley, Victoria's assistant, who looked so shocked he nearly dropped his coffee. At 9:15, his email pinged with a meeting request. Senior Manager Recommendation Review Board Conference Room 10:00 a.m. Attendance: Marcus Thompson, Victoria Sterling, Robert Henderson. Marcus stared at the email. This was it. The meeting Victoria had promised. The recommendation that could change everything. He spent the next 45 minutes trying to focus on work and failing completely. At 9:55, he straightened his tie, grabbed his portfolio, and headed for the conference room. Victoria was already there, seated at the long table next to Henderson, the outgoing senior manager whose position Marcus might be filling. She was wearing her armor again, the sharp blazer, the perfect posture, the professional mask. But when she looked at Marcus, he saw something warm flicker behind her eyes. "Thompson," Henderson said, gesturing to an empty chair. "Have a seat." Marcus sat hyper-aware of Victoria's presence beside him. "I'll cut right to it," Henderson continued. "Victoria here has been singing your praises for the past week, says you're the best analyst she's ever worked with. Says the Westfield presentation was 90% your work." He peered at Marcus over his glasses. "That true?" "I contributed to the research and analysis, sir. Ms. Sterling did the strategic framework and the presentation itself." "Humble. I like that." Henderson leaned back. "I've been at this company for 31 years, Thompson. I've seen a lot of talented people come and go. Most of them had all the skills and none of the character. You seem to be the opposite." Marcus didn't know how to respond to that. "Thank you, sir. Victoria's recommended you for my position when I retire next month. The board is inclined to agree pending this interview." Henderson glanced at Victoria. "But I wanted to hear from you first. Why do you want this job? And don't give me some rehearsed answer about growth opportunities and professional development. I want the truth." Marcus took a breath. He thought about Lily, about his mother, about all the years he'd spent working towards something that always seemed just out of reach. Because I'm good at it, he said finally. And because I have a daughter who watches everything I do, I want her to see that hard work gets rewarded, that doing the right thing matters, that being a good person isn't a weakness, it's a strength. Henderson was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Victoria. You were right about him. I know. Henderson stood extending his hand to Marcus. Congratulations, Thompson. The position is yours. We'll make the formal announcement at the end of the week. Marcus shook his hand, barely able to process what was happening. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Henderson gathered his things and headed for the door. You two work out the transition details. I'll be in my office if you need me. The door closed behind him, leaving Marcus and Victoria alone. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Victoria's professional mask cracked and she smiled. Really smiled the way she had at dinner, the way she had in his kitchen with Lily. You did it. We did it. No. She shook her head. This was all you, Marcus. All I did was stop standing in your way. He looked at her across the conference table, this woman who had been his obstacle, his enemy, his midnight phone call, his Friday night dinner companion. This woman who was somehow becoming something more. Thank you, he said, for believing in me when you didn't have to. Victoria stood and walked around the table until she was standing in front of him. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't deserve it. She reached out and straightened his tie, a gesture so intimate it made his breath catch. Dinner this Friday? She asked softly. My treat this time. What about Lily? Bring her. I promised to help with her next science project. Remember? Marcus smiled, feeling something warm bloom in his chest. She'd like that. Then it's a date. Victoria stepped back, her professional mask sliding back into place. Now get out of here, Senior Manager Thompson. We both have work to do. Marcus walked back to his desk, feeling like a different person. In the span of a week, everything had changed: his career, his relationship with Victoria, his sense of what was possible. His phone buzzed with a text from Lily, sent from Mrs. Henderson's phone. Did you get the job, Daddy? Mrs. H said to ask. He typed back, I got the job, baby. I'll tell you all about it when I get home. Her response was immediate. Yay! Can we get pizza to celebrate? Anything you want, sweetheart. I love you, Daddy. You're the best. Marcus put his phone away, blinking back unexpected tears. He thought about everything that had brought him to this moment. The late nights, the setbacks, the loneliness, the quiet determination to keep going even when the world seemed stacked against him. And he thought about Victoria, standing in his kitchen with coffee, sitting across from him at a small Italian restaurant, straightening his tie in a conference room. Some mistakes lead to the most beautiful beginnings. He was starting to believe that was true. The weeks that followed felt like a dream Marcus was afraid to wake from. His promotion was announced on a Friday afternoon, and by Monday morning he had a new office, a real office with walls and a door and a window that looked out over the Chicago skyline. Lily had insisted on helping him decorate, which was why there was now a crayon drawing of a volcano taped to his filing cabinet, and a photo of the two of them on his desk, taken at last year's 4th of July parade. Victoria had been promoted too. Director of Client Relations, the youngest in company history, just like she'd predicted. Her office was down the hall from his, now close enough that they could see each other through the glass walls if they both looked up at the same time, which they did, often. People are starting to talk, David Chen said one afternoon, leaning against Marcus's doorframe with a knowing smirk. About you and Sterling. Marcus didn't look up from his computer. People always talk. Yeah, but this is different. Bradley told me he saw her smile at you in the elevator. Victoria Sterling doesn't smile at anyone. She smiled at me. So what? So what? David stepped inside and closed the door. Marcus, I've worked here for 6 years. I've never seen that woman smile at anyone who wasn't a client with a 7-figure portfolio. And suddenly she's grinning at you like you're sharing an inside joke. What's going on? Marcus finally looked up. David was a good friend, one of the few people at Hartfield who had been genuinely happy about his promotion. He deserved something closer to the truth. "We've been spending time together, outside of work." David's eyebrows shot up. "You and Victoria Sterling?" "Yeah." "Like, dating?" "I don't know what we're doing honestly. Having dinner, talking. She's been coming to my apartment to help Lily with her homework." Marcus paused. "It's complicated." "I'll bet." David shook his head slowly. "Man, 3 months ago, she was making your life miserable. Now she's doing homework with your kid. People change." "Do they, though?" The question hung in the air. Marcus had been asking himself the same thing for weeks. Was Victoria really different now, or was she just wearing a new mask? Could someone who had spent 20 years building walls really tear them down in a matter of months? "I don't know," Marcus admitted, "but I'm willing to find out." David studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You're a braver man than me, Thompson. I hope it works out." "Thanks. But if she breaks your heart, I reserve the right to say I told you so." Noted. That Friday, Victoria came to dinner at his apartment. It had become a ritual over the past few weeks, Friday nights at Marcus's place, with Lily chattering about school and Victoria listening like every word was fascinating. They would eat together, help Lily with whatever project she was working on, and then put her to bed before settling on the couch with glasses of wine and conversations that stretched past midnight. Tonight, though, something felt different. Lily had been in bed for an hour, and Victoria was quieter than usual, staring into her wine glass like it held answers to questions she hadn't asked. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked. She looked up, startled. "What? You've been somewhere else all night. What's going on?" Victoria set her glass down and pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself smaller. It was a gesture Marcus had come to recognize her way of preparing for something difficult. "Richard called me today." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Victoria's ex-husband was a name that came up occasionally, always accompanied by pain. "What did he want?" "To apologize, apparently. He's in therapy now, working on himself." She laughed bitterly. "He wanted me to know that he understands why he hurt me and that he hopes I can forgive him someday." "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know." She pressed her hands to her face. "I thought I was over him. I thought I'd moved on. But hearing his voice," she shook her head. "It brought everything back. The fights, the betrayal, the way he made me feel like I was never enough. Like no matter how hard I worked or how much I achieved, I would always be too cold, too driven, too difficult to love." Marcus moved closer to her on the couch. "You know that's not true." "Do I?" She looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Because some days I'm not sure. Some days I look in the mirror and I see exactly what he saw. A woman who doesn't know how to let people in. A woman who pushes everyone away before they can hurt her." "Victoria, I'm doing it with you too." Her voice cracked. "I can feel myself doing it. You've been so patient, so kind, and I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. I keep waiting for you to see the real me and decide I'm not worth the trouble." Marcus reached out and took her hands in his. They were trembling. "Look at me." She did reluctantly. "I've seen the real you. I saw her the night I found you in that bar. I saw her the morning you made breakfast with my daughter. I see her every Friday when you sit on this couch and talk to me like I'm the only person in the world." He squeezed her hands. "The real you isn't cold or difficult or too much. The real you is scared. And that's okay. Everyone's scared of something." "What are you scared of?" "That I'm not enough for Lily, that I'll mess her up somehow, that she'll grow up and realize I was making it all up as I went along." He paused. "And I'm scared of this, of us, of letting myself want something I might not get to keep." Victoria's eyes widened. "You're scared of us?" "Terrified." "But you're still here." "Yeah." He lifted one of her hands and pressed it to his chest over his heart. "Because some things are worth being scared for." Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, like a question she wasn't sure she was allowed to ask. Marcus answered by pulling her closer, one hand cupping the back of her neck, the other wrapped around her waist. She tasted like wine and tears, and something he couldn't name, something that felt like hope. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "I don't know how to do this," Victoria whispered. "I don't know how to be with someone without messing it up." "Neither do I." "So what do we do?" Marcus smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "We figure it out together, one day at a time." She leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder, and they sat like that for a long time, not speaking, not needing to. Outside, the city hummed with its endless noise. Inside, everything was quiet. The next morning, Marcus woke to find Lily standing in his bedroom doorway, her arms crossed, her expression unnervingly serious for a 7-year-old. "Daddy." He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Yeah, baby. Is Ms. Victoria your girlfriend now?" Marcus glanced at the couch where Victoria had fallen asleep sometime after midnight. Her hair was tangled, her makeup smudged, and she looked more peaceful than he'd ever seen her. "I think so, baby. Would that be okay?" Lily considered this for a moment, her small face scrunched in thought. Then she nodded. "Yeah, I think she makes you happy." "She does." "Good." Lily started to turn away, then paused. "Can we make pancakes? I want to show Ms. Victoria how I flip them." "I think she'd like that." Lily ran off toward the kitchen, and Marcus heard her rummaging through the cabinets a moment later. He looked at Victoria still asleep on the couch and felt something settle in his chest, something solid and warm and terrifying in the best possible way. He got up and went to make pancakes with his daughter. Victoria woke to the smell of burning batter and Lily's frustrated shout of, "Daddy, you're doing it wrong." She appeared in the kitchen doorway looking rumpled and confused, and more beautiful than Marcus had ever seen her. "What's happening?" "Pancake crisis," he said, scraping a blackened disc off the pan. "Lily's in charge and I'm failing her standards." "The flip has to be smooth," Lily explained seriously. "You can't hesitate, or they get all wrinkly." Victoria laughed that real laugh, the one that still caught Marcus off guard, and stepped into the kitchen. "May I try?" Lily handed her the spatula with the solemnity of a knighting ceremony. Victoria poured batter into the pan, waited for the bubbles to form, and executed a perfect flip. "How did you do that?" Lily demanded. "My grandmother taught me. She said pancakes require confidence." "Can you teach me?" "Of course." Marcus stood back and watched as Victoria guided Lily through the pancake-making process, their heads bent together, voices overlapping. This was what he'd wanted for so long without knowing how to name it. This feeling of family, of belonging, of not being alone. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Call me when you get a chance. I want to hear about this mystery woman." He typed back, "I'll call you tonight. And Mama, I think you're going to like her." The response came immediately. "I better. That girl of yours has high standards." Marcus smiled and put the phone away. Lily was demonstrating her newly acquired flipping technique, sending a pancake sailing dangerously close to the ceiling. Victoria caught it on the plate and applauded like Lily had just performed a miracle. This, he thought. This is what it's supposed to feel like. The following weeks brought challenges of their own. At work, their relationship became an open secret. Most people were supportive, or at least curious. But there were whispers in the break room, knowing looks in the elevator, occasional comments that landed just on the wrong side of appropriate. "Must be nice," one of the senior analysts muttered one day, just loud enough for Marcus to hear, "getting promoted because you're sleeping with the boss." Marcus stopped walking and turned slowly. "What did you say?" The analyst, a white man named Peterson who had never liked Marcus much, shrugged with fake innocence. "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." "Let me think out loud for a minute, too." Marcus took a step closer. I've been at this company for 3 years. I have the highest client retention rate in my department, the most successful project portfolio, and recommendations from every senior manager I've worked with. I earned my promotion. The fact that I'm also seeing Victoria Sterling doesn't change any of that." Peterson's face reddened. "I didn't mean—" "Yeah, you did. And you know what? I don't care what you think. But if I hear you spreading rumors about me, or about Victoria, we're going to have a very different conversation." Marcus straightened his tie. "Are we clear?" Peterson nodded, not meeting his eyes. "Good." Marcus walked away, his heart pounding. He hated confrontation, hated the feeling of having to defend himself over and over again. But he'd learned a long time ago that silence was too often mistaken for weakness. That evening he told Victoria about the incident. They were in her apartment this time, the first time she'd invited him there, and she listened with her jaw clenched tight. "I'll talk to him." "No, I handled it." He shouldn't have said that. "People are always going to say things, Victoria. We can't control that." Marcus took her hand. "What we can control is how we respond. I'm not going to let some bitter analyst make me feel like I don't deserve what I've earned." Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Stay so grounded, so sure of who you are." She shook her head. "I've spent my whole life letting other people's opinions define me. First my mother's, then Richard's, then the board's. I don't know who I am when no one's watching." "That's not true." "It feels true." Marcus pulled her closer. "The woman who makes pancakes with my daughter, who laughs at Lily's jokes, who stays up past midnight, talking about everything and nothing, that's who you are when no one's watching. And she's pretty amazing." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve you." "Stop saying that." "But, Victoria." He cupped her face in his hands. "I'm not a prize you have to earn. I'm a person. A person who sees you, who knows you, who chooses to be here. You don't have to deserve me. You just have to let me love you." The word hung in the air between them. Love. Neither of them had said it before. Neither of them had been brave enough. Victoria's breath caught. Do I what? Love me." Marcus looked at her, this complicated, brilliant, terrified woman who had turned his life upside down in the best possible way, and told her the truth. "Yes, I do." She kissed him, then fierce and desperate and full of all the things she couldn't say. When she finally pulled back, her cheeks were wet. "I love you too," she whispered. "I didn't think I knew how anymore. But I do. I love you, Marcus." They stood there in her apartment, holding each other, letting the words settle around them like a promise. Outside, the city carried on with its endless noise and motion. Inside, everything was still. Later that night, after they'd talked and laughed and made plans for the weekend, Marcus drove home with his heart full. He picked up Lily from Mrs. Henderson's, listened to her recap of the day's events. A boy named Tyler had tried to kiss her on the playground, and she'd responded by informing him that kisses required consent, and tucked her into bed with her favorite story. "Daddy," she said as he was leaving her room. "Yeah, baby. Are you happy?" He turned back to look at her. She was watching him with those big brown eyes, so wise for her age, so attuned to everything he felt. "Yeah, sweetheart. I'm really happy." "Good." She snuggled deeper into her pillow. "You deserve to be happy, Daddy. Grandma says so." Marcus smiled. "Grandma's pretty smart." "I know. Night, Daddy." "Night, baby." He closed her door and stood in the hallway for a moment, letting the warmth of her words wash over him. He thought about everything that had led to this point, the struggles, the setbacks, the lonely nights, wondering if things would ever change. And he thought about Victoria, about the woman she was becoming, about the family they were building, one dinner at a time, one conversation at a time, one act of faith at a time. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Thank you for tonight. For everything. I'm still scared, but I'm not scared alone anymore. He typed back, neither am I. See you tomorrow. Wouldn't miss it. Marcus put his phone away and went to bed falling asleep with a smile on his face. The following Friday was Lily's school play. She had a small role, a singing flower, in a production about the environment, but she'd been practicing her 2 lines for weeks, determined to get them perfect. I'm a sunflower bright and tall. I help the bees and one and all, she recited for the 100th time that morning. Perfect, Marcus said. You're going to be great. Is Miss Victoria coming? She said she'd try to make it. Lily's face lit up. Really? Really. But remember, she's got a big job. Sometimes grown-ups can't always. I know, but I hope she comes. That evening, Marcus sat in the elementary school auditorium surrounded by other parents clutching phones and cameras. The seat next to him was empty. Victoria had texted an hour ago saying she was stuck in a meeting but would try to get there as soon as she could. The lights dimmed, the curtain opened. 25 children in flower costumes shuffled onto the stage, looking simultaneously terrified and excited. Marcus spotted Lily immediately, third from the left. Her yellow sunflower costume slightly askew, her face scrunched in concentration. His heart swelled with pride. The play progressed through its simple narrative pollution, threatening the garden, the flowers banding together, to save the environment, a rousing finale about recycling. When Lily's moment came, she stepped forward, took a deep breath, and delivered her lines with perfect clarity. I'm a sunflower bright and tall. I help the bees and one and all. The audience applauded. Marcus wiped his eyes, pretending it was allergies, and then he felt someone slide into the seat next to him. Did I miss it? Victoria whispered. Just caught the end. She squeezed his hand. I'm sorry. The meeting ran over. You're here. That's what matters. On stage, Lily was scanning the audience. Her eyes found Marcus first, then moved to the seat beside him. When she saw Victoria, her whole face transformed with joy. She waved wildly, nearly knocking the tulip next to her off balance. Victoria waved back, laughing. After the play, they waited in the lobby while parents collected their children. When Lily emerged still in her sunflower costume, she ran straight to Victoria. You came. I promised I would. Did you see my lines? I didn't forget any of them. You were perfect, Victoria said, kneeling down to Lily's level. The best sunflower I've ever seen. Lily threw her arms around Victoria's neck, hugging her tight. Over Lily's shoulder, Victoria met Marcus's eyes. There were tears in them. Thank you, she mouthed. He nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. They went out for ice cream to celebrate Lily's choice, obviously. She sat between them in the booth, still wearing her costume, chattering about the play, the other kids, the boy named Tyler, who had also tried to kiss one of the tulips and gotten in trouble. Mrs. Patterson said physical affection requires consent, Lily reported solemnly. Tyler didn't know that. Tyler sounds like he needs some education, Victoria said. That's what I told him. Marcus watched the two of them together, his daughter and this woman, who had somehow become part of their lives. 6 months ago, he couldn't have imagined this moment. 6 months ago, Victoria Sterling was the obstacle standing between him and everything he wanted. Now she was sitting in an ice cream shop with whipped cream on her nose, listening to his 7-year-old lecture her about consent. Life was strange. Life was wonderful. Life was nothing like he'd expected. Later, after Lily was in bed and the apartment was quiet, Victoria stood by the window looking out at the city lights. I keep waiting for this to feel normal, she said. Marcus came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What do you mean? This. Us. Lily. All of it. She leaned back against him. I keep thinking I'll wake up and it'll all be gone. That I'll have dreamed it. It's real. I know. But it doesn't feel real. It feels like a gift. I don't know how to accept. He turned her around to face him. Then stop trying to accept it. Just live it. One day at a time. One Friday night at a time. One sunflower play at a time. Victoria smiled that real smile that still took his breath away. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just didn't notice. She laughed and kissed him, and Marcus thought about all the ways this could have gone differently. All the choices that led to this moment. The night she called him from the bar. The morning she woke up in his apartment. The dinner where they'd first started to become something more. Every step had been a risk. Every step had been worth it. I love you, Victoria said against his lips. I love you too. Outside, the city hummed with its endless life. Inside, two people who had spent too long being alone stood together in the dark, holding on to something neither had ever expected to find. 6 months changed everything. Marcus stood in his kitchen on a Saturday morning, watching Victoria teach Lily how to make French toast, while his mother supervised from the counter with a cup of coffee and a critical eye. Dorothy Thompson had flown in from Atlanta 3 days ago officially to visit her granddaughter, unofficially, to inspect the woman who had captured her son's heart. You're letting the bread soak too long, Dorothy said. It'll get soggy. Victoria looked up startled. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't apologize, honey. Just fix it. Dorothy's tone was brisk, but not unkind. Cooking is about confidence. You hesitate, you fail. That's what I told her about pancakes, Lily chimed in. Remember, Ms. Victoria? You have to commit to the flip. Victoria laughed that real laugh Marcus had come to treasure. You're right, both of you. She lifted the bread from the egg mixture with renewed determination and placed it in the sizzling pan. Marcus caught his mother's eye across the kitchen. Dorothy raised one eyebrow, her signature move, the one that could communicate 1,000 things without a single word. This particular eyebrow raise said, She's nervous, but she's trying. I'll allow it. It was the closest thing to approval Dorothy Thompson ever gave. Later, after breakfast was eaten, and Lily had dragged Victoria off to show her something in her room. Dorothy cornered Marcus by the coffee maker. She's not what I expected, his mother said. What did you expect? Someone colder? Someone harder? Dorothy studied him. She looks at you like you hung the moon baby. And she looks at Lily like she's the most important person in the world. That's because she is. I know. Dorothy's face softened. I like her, Marcus. I wasn't sure I would, but I do. She's been hurt, that much is obvious. But she's healing. And you're helping her heal. She's helping me too. I can see that. His mother reached up and touched his face the way she'd done since he was a child. You look happy. Really happy. I haven't seen that since before. She didn't say since Lily's mother left. She didn't need to. I am happy, Mama. Good. Dorothy pulled her hand back and picked up her coffee. Now. When are you going to make an honest woman of her? Mama. I'm just asking. I'm not getting any younger, and I'd like to see at least one more grandchild before I die. You're 63. You're not dying. Everyone's dying, baby. Some of us are just better at ignoring it. Marcus laughed despite himself. His mother had always had a way of cutting through everything with a single sentence. It was where he'd gotten it from. I'm thinking about it, he admitted quietly. Dorothy's eyes widened. Really? Yeah, I've been thinking about it for a while, actually. But I want to make sure it's right, for all of us, especially Lily. That child adores Victoria. Anyone with eyes can see that. I know, but marriage is a big step. I don't want to rush it. Dorothy patted his arm. You've never rushed anything in your life, Marcus Jerome. Sometimes I wish you would. Some things don't need to be analyzed to death. Some things you just know. Is that what it was like with Daddy? His mother's face went soft with memory. Your father proposed to me 6 weeks after we met. I thought he was crazy. I said no 3 times before I said yes. She smiled. 42 years later, I still don't regret it. Best crazy thing I ever did. Marcus looked toward Lily's room, where he could hear his daughter's voice raised in excitement about something. He thought about Victoria, about the way she'd walked into his life like a storm and stayed like a sunrise. "Maybe you're right," he said. "I'm always right. Ask anyone." That afternoon, while his mother took Lily to the park, Marcus and Victoria sat on his couch in comfortable silence. She was reading something on her tablet. He was pretending to watch the game while actually watching her. "You're staring," she said without looking up. "Can't help it." She set the tablet down and turned to face him. "What is it?" "Nothing. Just thinking." "About what?" Marcus took a breath. He'd been planning to wait to find the perfect moment, the perfect words. But his mother's voice echoed in his head. "Some things you just know. About us. About where we're going." Victoria's expression grew cautious. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong." He took her hand. "Everything's right. That's what I'm thinking about. How right this feels. How right you feel." "Marcus, I know we've only been together for 6 months. I know there's still a lot we're figuring out. But when I think about the future, about Lily's future, about my future, you're in every picture." He swallowed hard. "I'm not asking you to marry me, not today. But I want you to know that's where I'm headed. That's what I'm working toward. And I need to know if you're working toward the same thing." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Marcus watched her face, looking for signs of panic or withdrawal, the walls she used to hide behind when things got too real. Instead, he saw tears. "I never thought I'd have this," she whispered. "After Richard, after everything, I convinced myself that love wasn't for me, that I'd had my chance and I'd ruined it." She squeezed his hand. "And then you came along. You and Lily. And you showed me that I was wrong. That there's always another chance if you're brave enough to take it. Is that a yes?" "It's a yes to everything." She laughed through her tears. "To the future you're describing, to whatever comes next, to all of it. Yes." Marcus pulled her into his arms and held her tight. He could feel her heart beating against his chest, fast and strong and alive. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." They stayed like that until they heard Dorothy and Lily returning from the park. Lily's voice echoing up the stairwell with stories about ducks and a dog named Biscuit who had stolen her sandwich. The door burst open and Lily ran in, breathless and happy. "Daddy?" "Miss Victoria, the most amazing thing happened." She launched into her story, and Marcus listened with half his attention while the other half stayed fixed on Victoria. She was watching Lily with such tenderness, such genuine joy, that his heart ached. This is it, he thought. This is the life I was supposed to have. 2 months later, Marcus proposed. He did it on a Friday night in his apartment, with Lily hiding in the hallway giggling, because she'd helped plan the whole thing. Victoria had come over for their usual dinner, not suspecting anything, and found the living room filled with candles and a nervous man down on one knee. "Victoria Sterling," Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly. "You walked into my life as my boss, my obstacle, my midnight phone call. And somehow you became my partner, my best friend, the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with." Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. "I know I'm not perfect. I know I come with baggage, a demanding job, a precocious daughter, a mother who has opinions about everything. But I promise to love you every day for the rest of my life. To support you, to challenge you, to hold you when things get hard." He opened the small box in his hand, revealing a simple diamond ring. "Will you marry me? Say yes, say yes," Lily shouted from the hallway, abandoning all pretense of hiding. Victoria laughed and cried at the same time. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." Marcus slid the ring onto her finger, and Lily came running out to throw herself into the middle of their hug. "We're going to be a family," she shouted. "A real family." Victoria held her tight. "We already are, sweetheart. We already are." The wedding was small by design. Neither Marcus nor Victoria wanted a grand affair. They'd both spent too many years performing for other people, wearing masks, pretending to be something they weren't. For the most important day of their lives, they wanted something real. They chose a sunny afternoon in June, in the same park where Marcus used to take Lily on weekend mornings. 30 guests sat in folding chairs, family close friends, a few colleagues who had become more than co-workers. David Chen served as best man, cracking jokes about how Marcus had gone from hating his boss to marrying his boss in less than a year. Lily was the flower girl, of course. She took the job extremely seriously, scattering petals with the precision of a military operation. Dorothy sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief and pretending she wasn't crying. And Victoria. Victoria walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, looking more beautiful than Marcus had ever seen her. Not because of the dress or the setting or the occasion, but because of what was in her eyes. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. "You look incredible," Marcus whispered when she reached him. "You look terrified," she whispered back. "I am, but the good kind." The ceremony was short and sweet. They'd written their own vows, pouring everything they felt into words that would never be enough. "I spent so long being afraid," Victoria said, her voice steady, despite the tears on her cheeks. "Afraid of failure, of rejection, of letting anyone see the real me. And then you came along, and you saw me at my absolute worst, drunk, broken, falling apart. And you didn't run. You stayed. You helped me up. You showed me that being seen isn't something to fear. It's something to cherish." She squeezed his hands. "I promise to see you, Marcus Thompson. All of you. Every day for the rest of our lives." Marcus had to clear his throat twice before he could speak. "I used to think I had everything figured out," he said. "Job, apartment, daughter routine. I told myself I was content, that I didn't need anything else." He shook his head. "I was wrong. I needed you. I needed the way you challenge me, the way you make me laugh, the way you love Lily like she's your own. I needed to stop being alone and start being part of something bigger." He lifted her hand and pressed it to his heart. "I promise to be your partner in everything. To hold you when you're scared, to celebrate with you when you succeed, to remind you every single day that you are worthy of love, that you are loved, that you will always be loved." The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Marcus kissed Victoria while their guests cheered, and Lily jumped up and down shouting, "They're married! They're really married!" The reception was held in Marcus's apartment, crowded with people and laughter and too much food. Someone had made a playlist that ranged from Motown classics to modern pop, and at some point, Lily dragged both Marcus and Victoria onto the makeshift dance floor for a 3-person slow dance that devolved into silliness. "This is weird," Lily announced, her arms wrapped around both their legs. "But good weird." "The best kind of weird," Victoria agreed. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Marcus found himself standing by the window, looking out at the city he'd called home for so long. Victoria came up beside him, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything that led to this moment." He turned to look at her. "A year ago, I was convinced you were my enemy. Now you're my wife. Life is strange. Life is wonderful." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I keep waiting to wake up." "You're not dreaming." "I know, but it feels like one. The best dream I've ever had." Across the room, Lily was showing Dorothy something on her tablet, their heads bent together, 2 generations bonding over whatever video had caught Lily's attention. Marcus watched them and felt a swell of gratitude so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. "Thank you," he said quietly. Victoria looked up. "For what?" "For calling me that night. For trusting me. For letting me in." He kissed her forehead. "For giving me a family. You already had a family. I had Lily. Now I have..." He gestured at the room, at his mother, at his daughter, at this impossible woman who had become his wife. Now I have everything. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the delivery room at Chicago General Hospital, holding Victoria's hand while she did the hardest work of her life. "You're doing great," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Almost there." "You said that 20 minutes ago," Victoria gasped. "I meant it then too." The doctor, a calm woman with kind eyes, looked up. "One more push, Victoria. Give me everything you've got." Victoria screamed. Marcus held on, and then suddenly, miraculously, there was a new sound in the room. A baby's cry. "It's a boy," the doctor announced. "Healthy and loud, just like his mother." Victoria laughed weakly, tears streaming down her face. "Did she just call me loud? I think it was a compliment." The nurse placed the baby on Victoria's chest, and Marcus forgot how to breathe. His son, their son, was tiny and red and absolutely perfect. "Hi, baby," Victoria whispered, her voice breaking. "Hi, sweet boy. I'm your mama." Marcus leaned down and kissed her forehead, then his son's. "Welcome to the world, little man. You're going to love it here." They named him James, after Marcus's father. James David Thompson, 8 pounds 2 ounces, with his mother's eyes and his father's stubborn chin. Lily met her baby brother the next morning and immediately declared him the best thing that ever happened to this family. "Even better than when I married Daddy and Mama?" Victoria asked, still tired but radiant in her hospital bed. Lily considered this seriously. "It's tied." Dorothy arrived that afternoon with enough food to feed an army and enough opinions to fill a book. She held her grandson for the first time with trembling hands and wet eyes. "He looks like Marcus did when he was born," she said. "Same serious face, like he's already thinking about things." "Probably thinking about his first promotion," Victoria joked. "Or his first science project," Marcus added. Lily climbed onto the bed next to Victoria, careful not to jostle the baby. "I'm going to be the best big sister ever. I'm going to teach him everything. How to make pancakes, how to do science experiments, how to flip stuff properly." "That's a lot of responsibility," Marcus said. "I can handle it." Lily's voice was confident. "I've been practicing." That night, after everyone else had gone and the hospital was quiet, Marcus sat in the chair next to Victoria's bed, holding James while she slept. The baby was awake, his eyes unfocused but open, staring up at his father with what Marcus chose to interpret as trust. "I'm going to tell you a story," Marcus whispered, "about how your mom and I met. It's a good one. Involves a bad decision, and the best phone call I ever got." James made a small sound. "Yeah, I know. It sounds crazy. But sometimes the best things in life come from the craziest moments." Marcus shifted the baby gently. "Your mom was my boss, you know. A really tough boss. She made my life pretty hard for a while. But then one night she needed help, and I showed up. And everything changed." He looked at Victoria, asleep in the hospital bed, her face peaceful in the dim light. "She taught me that people can change, that walls can come down, that second chances are real if you're brave enough to take them." He kissed his son's forehead. "And she gave me you, and your sister, and this whole beautiful life I never expected to have." James yawned, his tiny mouth opening wide. "I know, buddy. It's a lot to take in." Marcus smiled. "Get some sleep. We've got a lot of adventures ahead of us." 5 years later, Marcus stood in the backyard of the house they'd bought together, a real house, with a yard and a garage, and enough room for 2 kids, 2 careers, and all the chaos that came with both. It was Lily's 12th birthday, and the yard was full of her friends running and laughing and making the kind of noise that would have driven the old Marcus crazy. Now he just smiled and passed out hot dogs. Victoria stood at the grill, arguing with Dorothy about the proper way to flip burgers. "You're letting them char too much," Dorothy insisted. "They're not charred, they're caramelized." "Same thing," Yeah. It is absolutely not the same thing. James, now 4, tugged at Marcus's leg. Daddy, when's the cake? After the burgers, buddy. But I want cake now. Patience is a virtue. What's a virtue? Ask your grandmother. She loves explaining things. James ran off toward Dorothy, and Marcus took a moment to just watch. His mother still sharp-tongued and opinionated at 68. His wife successful and happy, and nothing like the frightened woman who had called him from a bar all those years ago. His daughter growing up too fast, already talking about high school and colleges and dreams that seemed impossibly far away. His son wild and curious and absolutely convinced that cake should precede all other foods. This was his life. This impossible, beautiful, unexpected life. Victoria caught his eye across the yard and smiled. That real smile. The one that still made his heart skip after all these years. "What are you thinking about?" she called. "Everything." "That's a lot." "I can handle it." She laughed and turned back to her burger argument with Dorothy. Later, after the cake was eaten and the presents opened and the friends sent home, the family sat together on the back porch, watching the sun go down. Lily was showing James something on her phone. Dorothy was dozing in her chair. Victoria leaned against Marcus, her head on his shoulder, her hand in his. "Happy?" she asked quietly. "More than I ever knew was possible." "Me too." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For answering the phone. For coming to find me. For not giving up." Marcus thought about that night 7 years ago now. The desperate call, the crowded bar, the woman who had been his enemy becoming the love of his life. He thought about all the ways it could have gone differently, all the moments where he could have walked away. "Thank you for calling," he said, "for trusting me, for being brave enough to let me in." "I wasn't brave. I was terrified." That's what bravery is, being terrified and doing it anyway. Victoria lifted her head and kissed him softly. "I love you, Marcus Thompson." "I love you too, Victoria Thompson." She smiled at the name. Even after 5 years of marriage, it still made her smile. "Mama, Daddy, look!" James shouted, pointing at the sky. "The first star!" They all looked up. Sure enough, a single point of light had appeared in the darkening sky, bright and steady and full of promise. "Make a wish," Lily said. "I already have everything I want," Victoria replied. Marcus pulled his family closer, his wife under one arm, his children pressed against his sides, his mother snoring gently in her chair. He looked up at that first star and thought about wishes, about dreams, about all the things he'd wanted that had seemed so impossible for so long. And he realized Victoria was right. He already had everything he wanted. Some people spend their whole lives searching for love, for family, for a place to belong. Marcus Thompson found all of it on the worst night of his boss's life, in a bar downtown when he answered a phone call he could have ignored. That's the thing about second chances. They don't come to people who deserve them. They come to people brave enough to take them. And Marcus Thompson, father, husband, senior manager, son, had been brave enough. That made all the difference.